so get out your binoculars and telescopes and let's make it a planet hunting month. So let me go through the whole month. Let me talk about the planets first in general. Then I'll move on to the events, and then I'll show you some constellations in the video as well. So there's not much else going on in June, but 3 good planets and 3 good times to see those planets. So let me go to a pretty much an average day. Let's go to the June 15th. And as we take a look at June 15th, at sunset, it's about 8:37. Let me go a little bit further. Let me go to like 10 o'clock, because that's when it's definitely dark enough. What you'll be able to see is Jupiter out there in the west out there. Jupiter is nice to see around sunset. It'll be very bright. It'll be below Leo the Lion, as you can see there. And, excuse me, it's not going to be up for all that long. In fact, if I fast forward to when it sets, it looks like it's about 12:30 that it's going to set. Now, what that means is you only have about 2.5, 3 hours to actually observe it. And that means that next month it's going to be even less. And by September, you're not going to be able to see it at all. So if you want to get some good observations of Jupiter in, now is the time to do it. So check that out. That's really the only planet you can see right at sunset. Let me get back to sunset. As you can see though, you can start seeing throughout the night. You can see Mars and Saturn. Now, at the beginning of the month, Mars and Saturn are not quite up at sunset. But if you go to about 10 o'clock, again, you can see. Excuse me, you can see Saturn and Mars off in the southeast. What am I going to say? Yeah, so look southeast after sunset, and I would suggest bringing a sky map of Scorpius and Libra. The reason being that the planets are probably not in that sky map, so if you're looking at something and it's not in the sky map, then you're looking at the planet. But anyway, Mars has sort of separated itself out from Scorpius, and it's moved into Libra. Now Mars is going to be the brightish reddish light above and to the right of Scorpius over here. Let me go back to June 15th. There you go. It's moved a little bit further. And Saturn's going to be over here to the left and above Antares, which is also red. So if you see 2 very red things, Mars is the one off to the right. So what's going to happen, let me zoom out, is what you'll see is that they'll sort of move toward the south. They'll be low in the sky relatively. And then by about 3 in the morning is when Mars is going to set, and Saturn is going to be about 1 hour behind it. Okay? Oh, note, Saturn reaches opposition this month. Mars did last month, and that kind of makes sense since Saturn's over here. Saturn would be about a month later. That means it's going to be up in the sky almost the entire night. It's also going to be as big as it's going to get in your telescope, although Saturn doesn't change its size nearly as much as Mars does because of the way our orbits are set up. So, oh, and by the way, if you do look at Saturn, zoom in there, you should be able to see some really nice rings tilted toward us or away from us, depending on how you look at it. But very, very nice rings here. And yeah, so give it a shot. You should also be able to see, I believe, Titan over here. That's a pretty good, easy moon to find as well. But anyway, so if you track Saturn and Mars, and you track them all the way into the morning, you will notice that if you look in the east in the morning, you might just be able to find Mercury over there in the east. Now, it's not going to be easy to find. It's only about 7 degrees above the northeastern horizon. And, well, it's just not that high above. However, if you definitely want to see it and want to know where it is, I would say look on June 3rd. It's not as easy to find Mercury in general, but you got the moon there. That'll help you out. So if you can find that nice, very, very thin crescent moon, even with your binoculars, Mercury is going to be up and to the left. So it just makes a really good guidepost to see it, even though Mercury is going to be brighter and bigger in the middle of the month. You might have noticed that I left out Venus. That's because it is behind the sun, so we can't see it. And those are the planets. So if we go backwards in the morning, you should be able to see Mercury. Move that to the 15th. Okay, Mercury over in the northeast. But then if we move back in time, Saturn and Mars you'll be able to see pretty much throughout the entire night, and Jupiter for about the first 2 hours of the night. And I'll be off in the west. All right, so, and again, Jupiter's always good to see. It's always big. Saturn's always good to see. It's always pretty big. Mars is good now because it just reached opposition, although the earlier in the month the better, because we lap it pretty quickly in our orbit, so it shrinks pretty quickly. But anyway, let's talk about some of the events. If we go back to June 2nd, June 2nd and 3rd is when Saturn reaches opposition. Like I said, it's as big as it's going to be, and it's in the sky for almost the entire night. And then on the 3rd, like I said before, on June 3rd, if you look in the morning before sunrise, you will be able to see Mercury and the moon over here in the east. Okay? And because that moon is very, very thin, the next day, if we look at the same spot, it's not going to be there anymore because it's a new moon. So on June 4th, we have the new moon. That means the darkest skies are in the beginning of the month. And then, well, the moon takes its turn as being a sunset object. So if we look around sunset in the west, and not on June 4th because that's the new moon, but on the 6th, about 2 days after the new moon, that's when you can actually start seeing a very, very thin crescent moon in the sky. Very hard to see. Binoculars will help. And then what you'll notice is that for every day from now moving on, you'll see that it gets thicker and thicker and bigger and bigger and brighter and brighter. And oh, hey, look at that. June 11th, the moon and Jupiter are going to be about, what did I say, I think 70 degrees apart? Excuse me, no, sorry, about 4 degrees apart. Okay. And that's going to be in the southwest after sunset, and they're going to set in the west around, let me fast forward the hours, they're going to set around 12:30 p.m. Yeah, so, but you notice if you look at the moon here, it's not quite first quarter. And what you'll notice is that the next day, whoops, that really zoomed in. The next day, on June 12th, it's definitely first quarter. And that's when the first quarter moon happens. With the first quarter moon, the right half of it is going to be lit up. And you're going to be able to see it from sunset, even before sunset, all the way to about midnight, maybe 1 a.m. And then, every night, what you notice, let me go to about 10 o'clock, that's a good time to look. If you look at the moon, you'll notice that it keeps getting thicker and thicker, and it starts moving over, okay, towards Saturn and Mars. And so what I have written down is from the 16th to the 19th, we have a close encounter between Mars, Saturn, and the moon. So let me zoom in a little bit here. Let me go to the 16th. Let's start right about there, okay? So you notice we have the south over here, we've got southeast over here, and we've got the moon, Mars, and Saturn. So you're getting this triangle on the night of the 16th. Now it's pretty low in the sky, but it should be pretty easy to find, especially since the moon is so big and bright. Then on the next night, the moon will have moved about 10 degrees to the left. Now it'll be pretty much between Mars and Saturn, although a little bit above, technically. And then the next night is going to be pretty close to Saturn. In fact, I believe, excuse me, let me see if I can do this. It will be about 3 degrees above and to the left of Saturn. And then the next night, on the 19th, you can see them sort of all in a line, Mars, Saturn, and then the moon. Then on the 20th, the very next night, we have the full moon. rising in the east around sunset, and setting in the west around sunrise. And that's when it's visible all night. Also on the 20th is the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year in the northern hemisphere. And there are a lot of explanations out there for that, but pretty much longest day for the northern hemisphere. And then if you keep track of the moon, which I'll show you, and let's say we look go about midnight, what you'll start to notice is that the moon will start getting a little bit thinner, and it'll be lower in the sky at the same time of night. It's turning into its gibbous phase. Then you'll have to look later at night, let's say 3 a.m., and if you look night after night, it gets thinner and thinner until the 27th is when we have the third quarter moon or last quarter moon. And let me rewind. That rises at about 1 a.m. Excuse me. Rises at about 1 a.m. and then it'll actually be visible into the morning, even into the dawn hours. And that's really about it for events for the month. Not much going on. But I'd say get out between the 16th and 19th and check out the Moon, Mars, and Saturn. So let me talk about some constellations real quick. I think one of the things that most people do when they're first starting out in astronomy is they like to look pretty much straight up. Now, I don't like to do that because it's easy to turn and get lost. However, let's say you do that. And let's say you go out after sunset. And sunset's about 8:30, so let's go about 9:30. You should be able to see the constellation Bootes right up above you. That's the shepherd, the kite, the ice cream cone, whatever your reference point is. And one of the easy ways to find that is to find the Big Dipper up here and follow the arc of the handle, follow that arc to Arcturus. And Arcturus is the brightest star in Bootes. Now, if you wait another 2 hours or so until about midnight, that's when you're going to see Hercules up here, which has the nice Hercules cluster within it, one of the great globular clusters in the sky. And then if you wait until early morning, you'll start seeing Lyra, Cygnus, and even Lacerda in there. Where did Lacerda go? There it is, up there. You'll be able to see them above you. And that's good because those are the summer constellations. They're starting to rise up now, starting to be seen in the morning, and that means summer's on its way. But let's draw it back from looking straight up, and let's look north, and let's look a little bit after sunset. Let's go to 10 p.m. again, and let's find some spring constellations. So, like I said before, if you can find the Big Dipper, you can find, by following the arc of the handle to Arcturus, you can find Bootes. Now, also around in that area are some other spring constellations. Now, if you find the Big Dipper, follow the arc to Arcturus, you can then speed on to Spica, which is the brightest star in Virgo. Virgo, I think, is a great constellation. It's dim, so you really get a reward when you find it. And yeah, so follow the arc to Arcturus and speed on to Spica. But now we can also go back to Bootes, Botes, however you actually say it. And to the left of that is Corona Borealis. Now this line doesn't do it justice. I include this star, and this star. So it's really a nice U-shape or cup shape in the sky. Really, really beautiful, really nice small constellation that's fun to find. Also next to that, you'll find the Hercules cluster, or sorry, the Hercules constellation. I usually just pay attention to the keystone here. All the arms and legs are sort of, I don't know, I can never really follow them. But you can see Hercules there. And if you have binoculars or a telescope, I highly recommend looking at M13, the Hercules cluster. It's just neat to see a whole cluster of stars in one spot. Lastly, Leo the Lion. Let me find them over here. And so if you can find the Big Dipper up here, you'll be able to take these two stars over here in the middle, and follow them and find Regulus, the brightest star in Leo. And then you can look at Leo with its backward question mark and red triangle. So anyway, I'm about 15 minutes in. It's longer than I like to go. So I say get out there, get a sky map from skymaps.com, and go ahead and see if you can get that telescope out and see Mars and Jupiter and Saturn all in one night. Should be a good time to do that. So I'd like to wish you very clear dark skies for the month of June.
All right. Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you, Rob. Does anyone have any questions for Rob that he's here tonight? Available for questions. Okay, well, Rob will be presenting a little bit tonight also with our astrophotography. Before we do that, Lane would like to discuss a little bit about why we like to image the sky and why it's interesting to us and why we think you'd be interested in it as well.
You're going to see a variety of ways of doing this tonight, from just a simple camera on a tripod. Doesn't have to be an expensive camera at all, but up through advanced equipment like this, which Dave will explain. And then I'll talk to you a little bit about, well, when you've got an image, if you took a picture of the night sky, how can you get more out of it? We'll talk about image processing. I'll take you through a couple of steps there. But you need to think about if you're shooting the night sky, you need to think a little differently than with a daytime shot. In the daytime, you think, okay, normally you just put the camera on automatic, I do it all the time, and take a picture. But the nighttime sky doesn't work that well that way. First thing, you need to take it off of automatic, put it on manual, and take a time exposure. In other words, you want to keep the shutter open 15 seconds or more. And to do that, you really have to put the camera on a tripod. A regular photographic tripod is just fine. You don't have to do anything else. The time exposure in 15 seconds will show you more in the sky than you can see with your eyes. That's one of the great things about it. So that's one of the driving factors of astrophotography is I want to see more. Now, you can see through a telescope more through a telescope than you will with your eyes, but if you put a camera on the back and shoot, once again, a time exposure, you're going to see even more than you can with your eyes. So it doesn't matter how you're doing it, the time exposure will show you more than you're going to see with just your eyes. And of course, the other aspect is sharing. Okay, you really want to share what you found in the night sky, and we'll see a lot of that tonight. Easy to do. The last thing I'll talk about very briefly is, believe it or not, you can shoot the night sky with one of these. The cameras on modern cell phones are incredible, the dynamic range. They can handle a dark image very well, so don't hesitate to do that. And the final thing is, believe it or not, just remember where the camera is, right there. You can put that up to the eyepiece on the telescope and take pictures. A number of people have done that with star watches and taken some pretty credible images. I mean, that like show the rings of Mars, rings of Saturn, excuse me. So all that's available. Just try it. You will not regret trying it.
Can you set that on manual?
I haven't found a way to do it yet.
Or the iPad?
No, I don't think so.
So you can, on manual, in terms of like a traditional camera?
Exposure, for the exposure time.
There are a number of apps out there that do permit you to do a little bit more like of a longer exposure. However, the results I've gotten are not very good. But there are apps out there for that to make your cell phones a little bit more capable than they come out of the box.
And the results are no good because you can't hold the camera steady long enough, right?
There's not an easy way to connect different lenses to them. I know that they do come, there are some that you can buy on the web that, you know, allow you to zoom. But if you're dealing with just a digital zoom, you're gonna have, you know, a hard time getting a quality image. But even just a regular DSLR, as Rob's gonna talk about here in a moment, which you can get them pretty reasonable, especially refurbished. Online now will do amazing work. But through the telescope, like Lane was saying, just a single shot with your cell phone, and you can get some really neat results.
Okay. So, my name's Rob, you saw me earlier. And I'm also that guy who brings his toddler to the meeting, so I apologize.
No.
He's got an iPad, so he's good.
Yeah.
What would we do without it? Anyway, I've actually found that my favorite telescope is my camera. This is the thing that I use the most out of anything.
Oh, I thought the
Mostly because it
county
takes
school
a
board.
lot less time to set
Lot
up.
of people said that.
I do not
And I
know.
don't have much time
My suggestion, sir,
What?
before you
to actually
go,
do much. So
is
this
to talk
is
to
one
the
of my
library
favorite
staff, because I know there may have been a second
Um,
meeting tonight.
so-
There's two different
So I
Let me
meeting
show you
rooms.
some of the
Sorry.
pictures that I've taken, and this is just based off of trial and error. I've just been practicing, trying. This is a picture of actually Lane's telescope and Orion up there, so you get a little foreground, background going on. There was a comet going on. You can just barely see it. This is comet. I forget which comet it was. But I was on a hill in Ephrata. Thank you. I was on a hill in Ephrata, and you can see the comet right there. And there's a nice waxing crescent moon, and there's a storm off in the distance, which just made, it was just nice to be able to capture that whole scene as opposed to just looking at the comet. But of course, I also just looked at the comet as well. And that's as much as I could get with just a zoom lens on the camera. I also use it for eclipses. That is a moon that is almost fully eclipsed. It actually happened at dawn, I think, last year. Here's another example of a picture I took during an eclipse. And you can actually get Orion in there, and you get some clouds rolling by that make these nice, really neat streaks. I've used it to take a look at close encounters. Right here we've got Saturn, Mars, and Venus in an airplane across. This is at Indiana Dunes State Park.
Are those single exposures?
Yes, all of these are single exposures. I have not been able to invest the time in learning any real type of image processing. Here's another one, just with a zoom lens, a very thin crescent moon. Here's a more detailed one, again, just with a zoom lens. And this is one of my favorites that I took. I went on a trip to California to visit cousins, and they live out in Ridgecrest, and there was an astronomy club meeting nearby. And the amazing thing is that out there's almost no light pollution. You can see it actually over here. I think this is a nearby town. I forget which one, but outside of that, it's easy to get a nice shot of Milky Way. Absolutely beautiful, and it was fun because this. I had my old camera here, and I actually just had it set up with some rocks, and I just had it take like a 30-second picture, and you can get little ghost pictures of people going and go up to the telescope. So it's fun. For me, it's just a trial and error, fun time. But there are some things, as far as equipment goes, simple DSLR. At first I bought the lowest model I could. I think it was about $300. You can get these used, and I might even sell this one eventually. If my wife bugs me enough, I'll definitely sell it. But this one was like $300 or so. And it came with a zoom lens, came with this lens. And that's how I got started. All I really had was a tripod. I've upgraded a little bit. I got a special little ball mount, which allows me to sort of twist around the stuff a little more. But if you do have the money, I would definitely suggest, if you're going to go into it, get one of the ones with a swivel screen. It is absolutely a neck saver. Okay? In fact, that's pretty much the only reason I bought this new one. So, and I bought it from a friend who happened to be selling it, so that really helped. As far as the equipment, it's basically tripod, camera, and the other important thing is a remote shutter. What this does is it keeps me from having to hit this in order to take the picture. Why do I need to do that? Because every time I tap this, it'll wiggle, and it'll mess things up. Whereas this will allow me to press it, and it just sends a signal as opposed to wiggling the whole camera. Plus, I can set it up to do any length of exposure, from fractions of a second to, well, I think forever, or as long as the battery lasts on this. It can also do sequences where, let's say I wanted to take a 20-second shot, but then I wanted to take 20-second shots over and over and over again for 2 hours. It'll do that. All I have to do is hit start and walk away, and it'll do that for me as long as the camera has a battery. Or you can just go for the simple one, which is this, which is just a button. That works very well too. This is what I started with. If you want to go even cheaper and more portable for a tripod, this thing, I think it was like 30 bucks or something like that. Super duper small, and you can just put your camera right on there and have it as a tripod. You can even actually wrap it around like a light pole with this Velcro strap. This has been really, really helpful as well. But anyway, let me just talk about if you do want to get into something like this. If you have a DSLR lying around, what do you actually need to know? Well, first of all, I started with knowing nothing, and I figured it out. But there's 3 basic things that you do need to sort of learn about. 1 is exposure time, 2 is ISO, and 3 is f-stop. Let me explain what those 3 things are and what they do. So this is a picture of the moon, obviously, but it has different exposure times. Okay? The one on the left is an exposure of 1 second. Now with that exposure of 1 second, you get very clear the crescent part of the moon, and you might just be able to make out the rest of it. But if I expose it for 4 seconds, 4 times as long, I actually get a little bit of the earth shine there, and I can see that dark part of the moon a bit more. So when you have the exposure time longer, you let in more light, and therefore, the crescent part's going to get washed out, but you get more light. Usually, that's a good way to go. If something's too dark, you just set it for longer. That's the first major control you want to keep track of. Second major control is ISO. Exposure and ISO are things that I play with the most. So if you take a look, these are both the same spot. I'm looking at the moon, waxing crescent moon, and the Pleiades. You notice the Pleiades here. It's a little easier to notice the Pleiades here. Why? Well, wait a second. They're both 1 second long exposures, both of them. It's just that this one has an ISO of 200. This one has an ISO of 400. What is ISO? I don't know what ISO stands for, but I do know what it does. I know that it's basically how much it amplifies the signal. Okay? So the signal comes in, light comes in, and it hits the chip in the camera. And if you have an ISO that's double what it was before, it amplifies the light. It doesn't actually amplify the light, it amplifies the signal of that light about twice as much. So that way you get a brighter picture. You're not actually bringing in more light, you're just turning it up in the digital form. Does that make sense?
What about the aperture opening?
That's the f-stop. The f-stop is how big the aperture is on the camera, essentially. Well,
Well, you can adjust it though, right?
yes, that's what I'm going to get to next. Yeah, the aperture actually I think is exactly the same all the time. The f is the f-stop has to do with the size of the, I don't know what that's called.
Iris diaphragm.
Yeah, what he said. And basically, it's like a second opening, really. So, and these were both on the same size. So then you get to the f-stop. Now, this is a 180 second, so it'll be 3 minutes. 3-minute exposure, looking north. You can see Cassiopeia here, right there, which means the North Star is probably that one right there. We might be each other. But anyway, so you sort of get this picture. Get a feel for how dark it is, how long the star trails are, plane going through. But let's say I want longer star trails. One thing that I could do is I could have it exposed for a longer period of time. In fact, let's say I expose it for 10 times longer. The star trails would be 10 times longer. However, my whole image would be 10 times brighter, which would look very washed out, and it wouldn't look very good. So what I can do is then, instead of having it at f3.5, which is about as big as that iris on the inside can get, what I do is I shrink it down. And if I shrink down the iris, that means I'm letting in less light. But if I adjust and do that for a longer period of time, I get much better star trails. So I'm going to go back and forth between the two pictures. Better with one or two. So what you notice is back here you can see a little more detail, but both pictures are about as bright. These star trails are longer, but the picture is just about as bright because I let in less light, about 1/10 of the amount of light, but for 10 times longer. So then I was able to get more of this motion. So anyway, now I just want to sort of show you a little bit more about what I've been doing. For example, this is one that I took of a Pequot Valley Star Party a couple months ago, I think. Now, just standard lens, 30 seconds. This was a 30-second shot. It's just sort of testing things out. I said low ISO 100. By the way, a low ISO is usually better to use because when you do step up the ISO and amplify, not only do you amplify the light signal, you also amplify the noise and the roughness of the digital information. So you amplify your problems as well. So I don't like to amplify my problems in general, so I kept that low and wide open. I just did it for 30 seconds. I don't know. I really wasn't all that impressed with this picture.
Cool. I like it.
Oh, thank you.
Do I?
Well, hopefully this next one impresses you more. What I did is I had it go for a longer period of time. Same f-stop, same ISO, but instead I went for 338 seconds, about 10 times longer.
Same time of night.
Yep.
Wow.
It's just that I didn't pick 338, it was just a matter of I set it to go and then I was busy doing something and it was like, oh hey, I forgot. And I came back, and so 10 times longer means I get some good star trails. Plus we had a light behind the camera, actually I think it was off to the side. And so you actually get some foreground lighting, which was really nice. And then I actually did it. I wanted even longer star trails, but I knew this was about as bright as I could get the picture. I don't want the picture any brighter, but I want longer star trails, so I want to take a picture for a longer period of time. So what do? Well, I take that f number and I make the f number bigger to make the iris smaller and let in less light. I go to f7.1 and I go for about 1200 seconds, should be what? 20 minutes, about, I believe. If I do my math correctly off the top of my head, which I usually don't. But yeah, so I see a lot more, longer star trails. The background sky sort of gets evened down a little bit. Anybody know what this is?
Somebody's red light?
That's right, somebody's red headlamp. This guy right here. This is Lane's telescope, and so you sort of see the ghost images of people walking around, and it's just sort of really neat. And then I wanted to go one step.
Polaris.
Yes, Polaris.
Very clear.
Yes, it is. Oh yeah. By the way, if you guys have any questions or comments, just shout them out or raise your hand, whatever you feel comfortable with. But, yeah, and then I did one more. I went F11, I went even longer. That looks to be about half an hour. Probably could have gone a little bit longer to get some more brightness, but this is when I was packing up and doing a whole bunch of stuff.
That's really cool.
But so all it is trial and error. You know, you don't need to get it perfect. I'm not winning any prizes or getting paid for any of this, so just having some fun. So I'll show you just some other pictures that I've taken. This was about 5 years ago or so. There was a total eclipse of the moon, total lunar eclipse, and so when that's dark, you can actually get full constellations with the moon. Otherwise, normally when the moon is up there, it's way too bright. You can't get any stars around it. And likewise for this one is ISO 1600. That's as high as my camera could get. It amplified the stars as much as I could with a 10-second shot.
Point out the Orion Nebula.
Right there.
In other words, with just this camera on a tripod, he got the Orion Nebula.
Just barely. You can tell it's a little bit fuzzy. And then I decided, you know what? Let's bump the ISO down, make it less sensitive, but go for about for a bunch of minutes. And I get the star trails of Orion and the moon. So it's just sort of plain. There are even ways. This was a picture I took at night of the beach, and the only reason I can see anything is because the moon's behind. So I used the moon as a way of lighting up the sky. Oh, and light pollution is a big deal. I took some pictures of light pollution. All of these pictures I had taken were about 15 seconds at ISO 1600. So they're about the same. This was when I lived in Africa. This was my backyard. Wasn't too nice. But then I'd go to Indiana Dunes State Park on a little trip. You can tell the difference. Back in Ephrata, sodium vapor lights, lots and lots of lights. Indiana Dunes, not so many lights.
So Rob, what's the general rule then for getting a darker image with a fair exposure, like 15 seconds or something like that, to minimize light pollution? Would it be like a smaller number ISO and a larger number SI? I mean, just a general rule. What would that combination be?
I don't know about combating light pollution. I usually, well, here's what I can tell you. One, I don't know. And I can tell you that when I try to do constellations, like just a constellation, I usually do about a 20-second shot at about 1600, 3200 ISO. That's just what I do. Do you know anything about combating light pollution?
Other than going to a dark location, they make filters. But other than that, I really can't get away from it, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think the filters are more for telescopes.
They do make a number of them that are actually clip in directly into the sensor in your camera.
Yeah.
You gotta be careful, depending on which lenses you have, that the lenses may not fit in. So do a little bit of reading prior to that, or swap those afterwards, and I can point you at some good stuff. Lane actually pointed me to it. What was it, Astronomy?
In the end, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So I use a filter on my telescope, it's known as CLS scope. And I've had it, and I noticed when I put it on there, it wiped a lot of the really faint stars out. Brighter ones that were there. It did come back some light pollution with it.
Yeah, it is going to make everything a little darker. These are filtering, but. And this is light pollution on Mauna Kea. Barely anything there. In fact, I even went longer, 120 seconds, and you still can't see any light pollution. Granted, that was a lot of focus. Another fun thing, if there's a night launch, I was able to see, this is actually a car, but I was looking south, and there was the LADEE launch, L-A-D-E-E. And I just took a bunch of, I think it was like 5-second exposures. 2, 3, That's when the first stage burned out.
Go back, go back, go back.
Well,
What launch was that? What was that?
sorry.
Where, a launch from where?
Oh, man.
From Wallow Island?
Yeah, from Wallops Island.
Wallops Island.
Yeah, from Wallops Island.
You can see those from here.
Go back one more, please. Okay, did you see that, actually, that you can see a separation?
Yeah.
Go, so there's a new, what looks like a star shows up there. That's actually the, separating.
Yeah. So at this point, it's separated, and then right at the end of the picture, it starts going.
Yeah.
And then this is the second stage. And there it goes. You can see the smoke. And then I got, I was actually able to sort of stitch them together. It's not beautiful, but you know,
It'd be a cool gift as well.
that would be cool. Now from there, you can actually move on to piggybacking it on a nice telescope mount, and you can actually track the sky and get much better pictures. These are a couple of pictures that I got using my telescope and piggybacking it on. You can also buy something like this. It's a sky tracker mount. It actually tracks the night sky. You can do it either with the sky or half the sky, so you sort of get a motion of the sky and the motion of the earth. That's how I was able to get a good picture. This is one shot. And if you go to my YouTube page, I actually did some time-lapse photography where I actually take a bunch of pictures all at once and just string them together in a video. Real easy, assuming you have iMovie, just sort of did it. But you can go there and actually take a look at them. I have them sequenced from the first or the worst to the latest that I've done. So you can go there and check that out. And if Dave wants to share this online, you can get some other stuff. My whole website is up there. I have an old blog, and this presentation is actually up there as well. So that's really all I have. It's just a couple $100 and some, you know,
I'm using the same camera as Rob has, and I was just very patient and watch on Canon's website. If you go to their refurbished section and you wait and you be patient, you can get that for $350. So they're a lot more than that. So if you wait and you just watch their website, they will show up. If you're interested in refurbished, they're much more reasonable. Okay, so Rob, can I ask you a favor?
absolutely.
May I hijack your camera for a second?
Sure.
Okay, so I want to show you kind of like a transitional point between what Rob just talked about and what I'm going to be discussing with this rig over here. And to do this, just give me a moment here. I'm going to make sure I don't rip any cables out of my stuff. How about that? That should work. Okay. So with this, I recently purchased a piece of software called Backyard EOS. Has anybody heard of it before? Okay. So the camera here is an EOS, Rebel T3i. And Canon has, and there's also Nikon, a backyard Nikon. So if you have a Nikon, you're not out of the woods with it. You can still use it. All that software is a way to connect the camera to your computer. And the computer requirements are not much. I mean, you can do this. Of course, the faster your computer is, the better it'll work, more responsive it'll be. But it's just a USB cable, and it plugs into the camera and allows you to control all the functions that Rob was just discussing with you from the computer. So it's acting like this trigger. And the neat thing about this is that all of the functionality that a laptop provides is available to you. Lane, do you mind hitting the lights for us? not getting anything. Oh wait, now it just flickered on. All right, let me try.
There it goes.
Okay. So, kind of an intermediate step between what I'm going to discuss here is you could use a software like this to control things with a lot more precision. And one of the most frustrating things for me when working with these images is trying to figure out and name all of the images and keep them organized on your computer. And then you end up having a bunch of files and you don't know what they were, you gotta click through them, and then you gotta name them. This software does all of it. You tell what exactly the object is. It'll record all of the information for you. So let's say we were looking at the moon. We can come in here, we can type moon. We can say if we're using any filters. Let me just turn off this night vision, make it a little easier to see for us. I can choose what I want to do. So, Rob was just discussing about f-stop, f-number. So I can choose what f-stop number I want to use. I can choose the duration of it, if I want it to be a 1-second exposure, a 2-second exposure, and so on. My ISO number, I can choose what ISO I want to shoot at. So let's say I want to shoot 400, I click that. And a pause or delay, or mirror lock. These are some more advanced features that the trigger mechanism will not do. So for instance, Rob mentioned if he's up here and he's touching his camera with his hand, that the actual physical touching the camera will cause it to shake, right? And that's a problem when you're trying to take these images. Well, the actual mirror that moves up and down inside of the camera can also cause a little bit of shaking. So by using this function called mirror lock, the mirror goes up, the camera waits for a second before it starts taking an image, and then once the camera has settled down a little bit and stopped shaking, then it'll start taking the image. So to have that, let's say we want to do a mirror lock, okay? And we want some delay, a few seconds, 2 seconds. All right, and let's take a preview image. Delay, mirror locks up, anti-vibration, 2, 3, 1. Exposure. And it's going to display our image. Notice it's downloading to the computer. There's no worry about an SD card. And we've got an image. Too bright? No. A little bit too bright, right? You can see the little, let's say we want to tone it down. Any suggestions? What should I do? You just listened to Rob discuss this. Which one do we want to change? F-stop? Higher or lower? Higher? Okay, let's see what happens. Do we want to go to what? How about F7.1? Want to try that? Okay, I can work the mouse. Okay, we'll do the same exact thing. I got one image. Let's do a quick preview. Once again, there's a delay. Mirror locks, anti-vibration. And it'll take the image, downloads it to the computer. And as we thought, we've lowered now the amount of light coming in, and as a result, we've got a darker image with the same ISO value and also the same exposure time. Now, let's change a different one. We talked about ISO. So, if we want our image to be darker yet, do I increase or decrease ISO?
Decrease.
Decrease ISO? All right, let's go with an ISO of 100. Who can remind us of what are some of the advantages of a lowered ISO? Rob mentioned it amplifies the amount of light coming in, but it also amplifies the noise. And noise is like that, fuzziness. Maybe if you think of like snow on a TV, bad signal, right? So that's what we want to not deal with. And so by lowering our ISO, we not only lower the amount of light coming in, or I should say, we not only lessen the amount of amplification we get of the picture itself, but also the noise is lowered, which is why it's nice. Okay, so let's see. darker yet. Okay, so now notice between my pictures here, let's say we wanted to, what we were really going for is we wanted to find out what was going on in the back of the room, and by, right now there's just too much brightness. If something were there, the fire extinguisher right there, you can see it's very hard to look at. Maybe that's our constellation or something. We can lower the light value, get a little bit more. Looks like it's going on its own here without me really doing anything.
Well, what's it doing?
Oh, look at this, the tripod.
Whoa,
Notice I didn't see the tripod very much at all in that first one.
yeah.
Okay, so this is the kind of details now we can draw out of an image that we otherwise wouldn't have seen.
And you can also set that to take exposure after exposure.
I can do endless amounts of operations on this. So notice it has a sequence of different events that can happen, and you can just add to this list over and over and over again. It bins it into a folder by itself. It organizes it. It gives you titles. It tells you all of the information right within the actual file name. So you're not going to end up with image 251 anymore. You'll end up with the moon, as long as you fill out the information here. The moon, and maybe you had a UV filter on it. I don't know why you use a UV filter for the moon. Mine, I always keep one on there, so if I forgot to take it off, right? Yeah, so you can do all sorts of stuff, and it's 100% automatic. You walk away and come back in an hour.
How do you take pictures of the sun?
You would need a special filter, a solar filter, in order to do that. But it would operate just the same then. Please be careful if you ever plan on doing that, of course, because the sun can hurt your eyes.
You can buy solar filter or paper. It's like a film. You can buy it. What I've done is I bought some of that, cut it into the shape of my lens, and then just put like some cardboard around it just to sort of make it's total makeshift. May as well be made out of duct tape, but you can just put it up and that you can take pictures of the sun with.
They also have, one of the solar filter, like eye filter companies, they've come out with ones for little telescopes, and they also work great on cameras, by the way. I have a bunch of them.
Bayer makes them.
Okay.
Bayer
They're just paper, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like what Rob was saying, just a film. So there are pre-made ones where you can just buy the film and then it's a little bit less durable. Any questions about the backyard EOS at this point?
Are there any free versions of that?
No.
Do we need a grant to get it?
This was fundraised. Sorry, fundraised.
I just looked it up. I think there's a basic
$50.
version for 45 and an advanced for like 65.
One of the other things that is pretty cool about this is that there's a bunch of things that this can do so for instance, I'm not going to be able to show you anything through the scope, so I'm just going to use this as my way of showing you. So when I'm using the telescope, I can turn on this drift align thing, and I can actually see is my telescope in focus, and is my telescope on the particular place I want it to be, and is it tracking properly. So in other words, if I put a star right there, and I wait, and I watch my mount move over time, if the star starts to drift out of this location, I can find that out through using this reticle, okay, this image. The other thing that I really like it does is frame and focus. So I can choose a region and I can say, okay, well this is the area I want to shoot. One of the biggest problems that I don't know if Rob mentioned with doing night sky photography is it's extremely difficult to get focused. And there's a best way to do this, and there's a bad way to do this. The best way is to try to get, if you have a camera that has a live view option. So for instance, this particular camera has a live view option. You can actually then use the zoom function on the camera while outside, make sure you're clicked on to manual focus, and you can manually focus the stars while you're zoomed in, and then don't touch it again. once you're focused on something in the sky, it's all at infinity. You don't have to worry about refocusing for different things like the moon or stars. It'll be in focus. If you try to shoot something in your house, well, of course that's at a much closer location, so you're going to be out of focus then. So what I hear is people trying to figure out how to do this in their house. For instance, my sister-in-law, she's very, very good at photography. She's interested in astrophotography. She was trying to use something in the house to focus on and then go outside. Well, that's too close, and that's really far away. It's just not going to work quite right. So if you don't have live view, you can focus manually, go outside, find something as far away as you can. Okay, a light off in the distance somewhere, focus on that first, and then don't touch your focus again. Try not to bump it.
And by the way, a good thing to do is take a little strip of painter's tape and take that focusing ring down so it can't shift. Once you have it focused.
So with this view, I actually have the ability to do a 5x zoom, and I can do just that then. So let's say we wanted to get this in focus at the back of the room there. We now can come in here, and we can really see what we're doing. And we can get that in focus, and now when we take our shot, it will look a lot better. The last thing that this is able to do is planetary. If you're interested in planetary photography, it's a little bit more advanced because planets are actually fairly small. So what you end up doing is you end up taking a video and you do a process called stacking, which, depending on how much time we have, Lane was going to discuss. I haven't done any of the other stuff yet, but I don't know what you want to do if we're low on time.
I was going to talk about stacking, but not in the context of video.
Understood. Okay, give me 5 more minutes, okay? All right, so the cool thing about a DSLR is that it has a really, really big sensor compared to something like a webcam. And so you end up getting all the benefits of a DSLR with the video like you would get from something like this, for instance. A dedicated planetary camera, that's this. And I can pass this around. So this is actually something from Orion that is meant to do planetary imaging. It does a great job. But the problem with that is it's only like a 300 pixel size versus this, which is a 1080 high definition camera. So I get a lot higher resolution out of this, and then it puts it right into the computer as well, which is super nice. Okay, so this is a really nice piece of software. Now, any questions before I shift gears? Yeah.
The DSLR cameras have a small sensor, and also there's a large format sensor.
Comparatively, yeah, these are small. There are different sensor sizes on DSLRs. Both Rob and my cameras are the smaller of the two. You know, you're in the $500 to $1,000 range here. If you go with full format, you're looking at upwards of $2,000 to $3,000 or more, which I'm not interested in.
Can I ask one other question?
Yeah.
Is there any risk of damaging the sensor if you're taking a picture at nighttime and you're allowing too much light in with the ISO? Can you damage that sensor?
At night, I don't think so. No.
So you can experiment.
Now with the sun, yes. If you're not doing it quite right, then I would be concerned. But not with the nighttime. Okay. So this is like half of my discussion, and I probably will go over my allotted time. Sorry, Lane. But I want to show everybody this. So this is a setup of basically the same camera Rob has right here, and rather than just taking a picture with a lens, I'm using this telescope as my lens. So I have this thing in the center, which is called a field flattener. You can just there's tubes that will go in like an eyepiece. This is just a little bit more advanced. It keeps the image a little bit nicer. on the edges. That locks into place just like an eyepiece, and then we can use the focus of the telescope now rather than the focus of the camera. And it works just the same. The difference is, Rob, what's it's a 18 to 55 zoom per millimeter. So here's 55, here's 18. This is a single focal length of, I believe it's 450. Okay? Now, Lane, your telescope's 800?
1,000.
1,000 millimeter. So you get more zoom. So the difference between my telescope and Lane's will have less field of view, right? But he'll have more what we would consider zoom. All right? Now the nice thing about astrophotography is a lot of these things are really big. Andromeda Galaxy, like almost the size of your fist in the sky. So actually wide field, less focal length is actually pretty good. This telescope happens to be a nice balance between DSLR photography and extreme zoom you might get with something like some of the other telescopes you might see. So that's that. Now, there's a lot of wires here, and it's intimidating, not just for the newbie, but for me as well. I have not been doing this very long, and it took quite a bit for me to really understand what I was doing. But once you understand the basics, I think it really makes sense. So first off, we've got, of course, the camera. Hey, look at that, that's familiar. I don't need the laptop. I can sit here and I can take shots using this, just like Rob did. Hear it beeping, that's each second. And I can actually view everything that I'm doing right here on my viewfinder, just like Rob. It's as simple as that. You don't need all this other gear. Okay? Now, this is an equatorial mount, which means it'll track the sky as we go. We also have it integrated with my traditional go-to telescope capabilities. Now the really cool part, which I absolutely love, okay, so let's say I want to find something, and I'm just going to make it act as if it's finding an object, so telescope starts to move. I'm finding my first alignment star. Okay, I gotta watch this because I got so much stuff connected to it, I don't want it to hit my mount. So I find a star, and I'm not actually going to align it because I don't know where Arcturus is. Now this would be aimed at North Star Polaris, right? This axis of the mount points towards Polaris. Okay, so I would go in here, I would check to make sure I have Arcturus in my eyepiece, or I should say my finder scope here, and then also to make sure that I have it on my camera. So I have my finder scope, right, with the crosshairs, then I find it on my camera. Okay, now, second, I have to find a second star. So let's just pick one. Okay, now it's going to go find a second star. And once I do this, the computer on the telescope is going to know where all of the things in the sky are. Okay, so it's found it. We're going to act as if it's good to go. And that's it. Okay, now, here's the beauty. I've got another piece of software on here that Rob used. Same program Rob was using for his observing with Webb, called Starry Night. There's many things out there. Stellarium is another one. There's free Stellarium. There's also Worldwide Telescope by Microsoft. That's free. The Sky. Google Sky, is that telescope connectivity?
I don't.
Okay, all the ones I mentioned have telescope connectivity, and some of them are free. Okay, this one is a different one. There's different versions of this particular one. Now I have it connected to the telescope using this cable coming in via USB. Now here's the beauty. See that little box? That's my camera. That's the sensor on the camera. So if I want to look at something, let's see, what do we want to find? How about we want to find the Ring Nebula tonight at midnight? All I have to do is type it in, Ring Nebula, which is now going to take this and point me in the sky towards the Ring Nebula. And I can actually say slew to the Ring Nebula. Oh, or not. Okay, this was working last night. Try this again. One second here. Of course, now in front of everyone, it won't work. Okay, so what I'm trying to show you here is that basically I can get the telescope to move, if I can get it to work. I can get the telescope to move to this position automatically. Give me 1 second here and maybe I can get it to function. Restart the program. Are there any questions while I'm restarting the program?
Yeah, a general practice, is it a good idea if you're gonna do this to have like a dedicated computer just for this, or doesn't it matter?
Doesn't matter. I don't think. Personally, I'm using this computer for many, many different things.
I should drop it on the pavement in the dark.
In fact, many people use some fairly low-end computers to do this, because I hear people say about tripping over wires and knocking it off and hitting the pavement. I did that the other day, not with this computer, but with an old one. So yeah, that's a concern, because you are working in the dark.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see if I can get this to do what I'm asking. Okay, and let's see, sync my gaze.
So in the setup you have now, is it the guide scope that's gonna keep it centered, or is it the program that's gonna keep it centered?
I was trying not to go into the guide scope. It's actually the program and the mount. The guide scope's a whole nother level that I'm not going to get into this evening, just for the sake of time.
But
Okay.
it is a feedback loop among the three.
Yes. Okay. Hopefully this works. So basically, I'll show you here. So I'm pressing north, pressing west, pressing south, and the mount's doing what I'm asking it to do. But what I was hoping to show you is that it should just do it on its own. There it goes. So I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
The telescope's moving on its own. All I have to do is do a few keystrokes on the computer. Then I go into Backyard EOS, I set up my run, and it does all my imaging for me. I walk away for an hour, I come back, I got images, and it's all automatic. It's kind of cool. And you know, Lane, I know your software does, you can even move objects, right?
Same kind of thing, but you're stretching a cord there.
This could be a telescope of the future.
And this is what I call lazy astrophotography.
But it's good for your marriage, right?
Back in the night, find out there was a great thunderstorm.
Yeah.
Fishing.
So one thing I'll mention before any longer, you may see this box here. The one last thing that I think is an important thing to have with this type of a setup is a dew heater, and this is a controller to control so you don't get dew on your telescope. Because the worst thing to do is, like I said, you walk away for an hour, and then you come back and your telescope's full of dew, and all the images you thought you were taking are junk. and you just wasted a beautiful night.
Oh.
So that dew heater will keep just like your car mirrors have the little heater to keep them clean, that does the same thing to the telescope. Okay? Are there any questions for me?
What was the name of that Canon site again?
The Backyard EOS software?
No,
To get to the refurbished?
yeah.
It's just Canon's official website, and I go to refurbished under their sale menu. That's all it is. It's just their Canon official website, canon.com, I guess.
What Canon model is that you're using?
A T3i,
T3.
which, if you look at the there's T4i's, T5i's, T6i's, and I think maybe even P7i's now.
7 just came out, yeah.
There's really no difference in the sensor. The only difference is they have touchscreen now, and they have a little bit more functionality, but honestly, for this, I've seen a number of reviews. Even given the other ones coming out, a lot of the reviews continue to say the T3i is one of the best astrophotography DSLRs you can get.
Aside from the one specific
Yeah,
for
the
astrophotography, but.
60DA is like the amazing thing, but it's like $2,000.
Yeah, and unless you're like doing Lane's level of.
Well, at that point, you need to go to something else, but
Yeah, but for beginning and trying out.
you need to hook up.
Yes.
So we've got last part here. Lane's going to be discussing image processing. So Lane, I'm going to move
Okay.
this.
So far, actually, we've talked about just getting an image, which is called image acquisition. But once you've got an image, because it's digital, there's a lot of things magical about digital. But because you've got a digital image, you can run mathematical algorithms on it. You know what? It's going to take you just a second. Could you flip on the light up there so I can see?
Yep.
I think.
So while we're in transition here, the question about the guide scope. So just so everybody understands what we're talking about, this is a second camera, and the job of this camera is to take information about what's being seen up in the sky, a star, and this camera monitors the location of that star, and if that star moves at all, this camera sends a signal to the mount, which tells the mount to move back to that position you want it to stay at. So that your mount is a bunch of gears, and gears are not perfect. And so this compensates for any problems in the actual mechanisms in the mount itself. And it does that through going through the computer and a connection with these USB and R32 cables, 232, these cables. Okay?
Okay, ignore that picture. Ignore that. Now you can ignore that. Okay. All right, so you've got an image now. There are two problems with it. And we can, if you want to, in a future session, we can get more advanced in this. But you want to reduce the noise, and I'll explain what noise is. You also have to do what's called a stretching operation, and I'll show you about what all that's about. But first, let's talk about how do you know when you have a good image. All DSLRs will let you pull up what's called a histogram, this guy right here, and it'll evaluate your image. So let's take a look. This is a great site, by the way, for explaining this stuff. This shows you the distribution of light across the sensor in 2 dimensions. One of them is how much light there is. So this is the maximum amount of light the sensor can record. So that's white. The minimum amount is right down here at 0, that's black. Everything else is a grayscale in between, okay? This shows you how many pixels have these various values. Now what happens is, in an image you're taking in the night sky, all your data, usually you're shooting something faint. All your data is going to be down here on the left-hand end. It's going to be pretty faint. Right? And yet your computer is trying to show this entire range, which it can't do. My computer can show, I think it's about, think of these as grayscales, from 0 all the way up to 65,000 levels of gray. Now visually, you won't distinguish between 65,000 and 65,001. Your eyes can't do it. But believe it or not, the sensor on your camera can do it. But your computer screen where you're showing all this, and we're showing this, I mean, it's coming through that projector, but that's a computer screen. Can only display at the most, I think my computer will display 13,000 levels of gray. And I bet you that projector won't go up beyond 6,000 levels of gray maybe. So here's my problem. All my image, what I want to show is right here, and that constitutes, say, about 20,000 levels of gray that I want to show. How do I cram that down into 6,000 levels, which the projector is capable of? This is the kind of stuff you have to start thinking about in processing a digital image. And I'll show you exactly the way it looks. All right, let's go here. That's an image that I took out of my backyard last fall of a nebula in the northern part of the sky. It looks like there's nothing there. What? Yes, please. It looks like there's nothing there.
What was that?
You see stars, that's it, right? Yes.
That was your telescope or camera?
That's through my telescope with a special astronomy camera. But the sensor in it works exactly like the sensor in a DSLR. Okay. So you could just as easily, in fact, the first 5 years I was doing this, I was using a DSLR with my telescope. You've got the same problem. In other words, it doesn't matter whether it's an astronomy camera or a DSLR. So we got these stars scattered around, a few bright ones. If you look carefully, can you see that faint one right there? Okay, barely make it out. And there's a nebula all over here. I know that for certain because the software on my computer tells me I'm pointed right at the heart of that nebula, but you can't see it. So what we're going to do is that stretching operation. What I'm going to go back to the other slide, we're going to take this portion right here and stretch it all the way across there. I'm going to basically throw away this data because I'm not interested, and I'm going to throw this away because that's the noise, and we'll circle back to the noise issue in just a moment. So probably the easiest way of doing this, in this package is I'll go into processes, I'll bring up, no, that's not what I'm doing. All processes, come on. I'm going to bring up something called the, where is it? Histogram transformation. All right, now, and then I'm going to say, I want you to operate on this image and select that one. Suddenly you'll notice with this image, That's the signal I want. That's the nebula right there. See that little spike right there? That's all the stars in the image. Okay. But that's what I really want. So basically, I'm going to throw this away. I don't get rid of the stars. I'm just going to make them all white. Right? Let them be what they are. And somehow I have to stretch this narrow portion of the image. And this package, that's a remarkably easy thing to do. I just grab that pointer, slide it down here, and then I'll grab this pointer. Remember I said I was going to throw away the noise on the left? And then I'm going to pull this in a bit more. Okay, and apply it. And voila, okay. Now it's a bit overdone. I can play with it some more, but you can see the nebulosity coming out here, and it's actually all over the place if I play with it a little bit more. So does everybody get the basic idea I'm talking about? The signal I've gotten, that nebulosity, is real, it's almost black. I mean, it's very, very faint, and I've got to pull it out so I can see it on the computer screen. And the way I do that is nothing but mathematical operations. Because remember, a digital image is nothing but a string of numbers. It's your computer that renders it into an image. So we're changing numbers is what we're doing. All right, but now let's take a look at this over here. Where do let's blow this way up. Look at all these speckles here. My gosh. That's a faint star. That's actually what's called a hot pixel in the camera. They all have them. We need to fix that, okay? But this is noise. This is what it looks like. This should be either black or very dark gray, whatever you like. It should be uniform, or really close to it. And that noise affects your image. And that noise is all the stuff on the left of the signal. And it's both comes from the sky, light pollution, and it comes internally from the camera. Okay. It's always there. You can't stop the sensor from recording, but you can get rid of it. And so what you do, and what we'll do now, is you stack a bunch of images together. And let's see, what are we at? We're past 8, so we're going to have to make this quick.
Yeah, we can, I would like if we would do a more in-depth talk some other time.
Yeah. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this is really fun
I'm
stuff.
game.
What I'm going to do is, I'm going to take a different image, this one. That's M13, Rob was, the Hercules cluster that Rob was talking about earlier. I'm going to stack
This is
a
from
whole
Cherry
bunch of
Springs.
these together.
Is that the one you just took up in Cherry Springs?
Yes. So this is a brand new image. I haven't even had time to play with it yet. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say stack. And it wants me to go, well, stack what? I'm going to say, okay, stack these. Okay, I took, what, 7 images. Mathematically, you need at least 7. And I'm going to tell it, okay, do your thing. Now, there's no time to go into this, but when you stack multiple images together, it reduces the noise, or in other words, improves the noise-to-signal ratio. The signal being the light from the object I'm trying to image, and the noise is generated by the camera and any light pollution left over. But if I stack them all together, mathematically, I can get rid of it. And okay, I didn't get any warning messages, so it seems to be happy. Now what I'm going to do, you won't see the noise unless you stretch it. So what I'm going to do is just I'm going to use an automatic stretching routine here. Bang. All right, there we go. Now it's stretched.
That's much nicer.
Love automatic stuff, don't you? And we'll zoom in on this image. And shoot. Where? I'm stretching pretty extreme. But if we get away from the cluster where it is just dark sky, you can see a lot less noise. And if I do a little more work with it, I can get rid of all the noise. All right?
Does that also get rid of your hot pixels or no?
Yes. Okay, so the point is, and if we have another session on this, I'll take some stuff that Dave did, okay, some shots he took, and we'll stack them together and I'll show you how it works there. Just with the DSLR. It works the same. So, like I said, stack them to improve the signal to noise ratio, and then you got to stretch it in order to show that faint stuff that you want. Now, I'll show you one last image, just to show you how this can work.
The joys of technology.
And the frustrations. Everything here is a double-edged sword.
So you gotta be out at night to get your picture, then you gotta be up in the daytime to process it.
You got it.
Cloudy nights.
But see, the thing, the advantage you got with digital is I can go look at the histogram of each image and make sure I have good data. So I know the image is okay, right? And so I don't have to do anything else until the next day. Image data, slide. Probably a good one would be like this one.
So, do you take your images in black and white, or do you process color later?
Okay, the answer is, my camera only operates on grayscale,
Okay,
so to get color, it's got a color filter wheel in it.
yes, okay.
So to take one color image, I need a luminance, red, green, blue, and I have to take 4 images to make up one color image. And you want to take a minimum of 7 images of each one of those channels in order to be able to do noise reduction and things like that. So that's 7 times 4, that's 28 images I have to take.
At what exposure, for example, to this one?
I'm sorry, what?
At what length exposure?
I think that was 5 minutes each.
5 minutes each, okay.
And of course, the concept of f-stop doesn't really apply here. What it does with the telescope, it's an f7.
That's a beautiful picture.
Thank you. It looks better on the computer. Projectors haven't caught up with computer screens yet. Okay. I'll stop there. Any questions? Yes?
If you took, say through your camera, and took, whatever, half-second exposures, can you take enough of them and stack all those and come up with a?
You're still limited. If I took, instead of 5-minute images, if I'd taken 2-minute, this would be here to be a lot dumber.
Yeah.
Yeah. You still have to have a good exposure time. And that's what the histogram is about, by the way. I'll show you.
You just can't take a half-a-second exposure of, say, M81 through a camera and then stack maybe
Yeah, they're
20
not
or 30 of them on top of each other.
They're not additive, they're average.
Okay.
That's the problem. If your histogram on the image looks like this, you're good. In other words, that, you know, that's your signal. That's what you want. That's the nebula. You want to pull it up out of the noise here a little bit. In fact, I could have pulled it out a little bit more, moved this peak over here. Might have been a little bit better. But I was in a hurry.
I'm just going to leave you guys with one last thing, kind of circling back to what Rob was talking about at the beginning. My sister-in-law has, once again, the same exact camera that we've been discussing about the whole time, the T3i, and she's a photographer, but not an astrophotographer. One of her first shots, that does not do it any justice, of course. You can see the screen here. It's a single shot with a DSLR, just mounted on a tripod, no tracking, and that's in Cherry Springs. So the benefits of light pollution-free skies are enormous. So, you know, if you'd like to come up and look at that, if you'd like to come up and look at the gear, we'll be here for a few minutes as we're packing up.
You should come up and look, because I can point out so many things in this image. Like, that's a nebula, see that little bit of red right there? Okay, that's another nebula. You can see dark streaks through here. That's dust. I mean, so many things.
And that's, by the way, no processing at all.
Right.
That's a single shot with no processing at all.
Even if, when we get together next time, if you want, we'll reprocess this image. You can still improve it, even though it's the same image. And the same with the stuff that Rob took.
And how many seconds was that?
15.
I'm sorry.
How many seconds were exposed?
Hey, Dave, how many seconds?
I have to look.
Well, about.
I didn't do the picture, so I don't know.
Probably
15 seconds at the most, I think.
20 to 30, I would say.
Really?
Yeah, you got a little bit of Star Trek.
Sorry, I'm just learning again.
Oh, that's fine, that's estimate is fine.
Yeah. So like I said, come on up and check this out if you have specific questions. I'm planning on going to Scooters afterwards. Is anybody interested in coming with me? Grab some food, talk?
I'll be there.
Okay.
What is that?
Scooters, a restaurant up the street, just to talk afterwards and grab some food or a drink or something. We tend to do that every time, so you're all welcome. If I can get a head count though, so we can know how many seats to ask for. Raise your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7? Okay. All right. Thank you, folks, and have a great evening.
If anybody's interested, there's some Sky Telescope magazines on the table, free, take wherever, for how many you want. Compare.
Thank you.
Other than that,
Yeah.
certainly. Yeah, just like that one. Does have a guy who got a day job, who makes the software, and he, he just does his career as a night thing. So, he's like a night job as well. But it's amazing software. Very, very user friendly. You know, you can get the functionality just through the Canon E2 utilities. You can actually take live photos. This is so much nicer. Just the way it works. I would double check on the website. But I imagine it works with most, if not all, Canon.
It's getting older.
Yeah.
TV options are okay.